What's up, everybody? Welcome to Loading Screen Let's Play Resident Evil Village impression video. This is our first one. If you guys don't know me, my name's Alex, host of Loading Screen, your morning talk show, all gaming news, industry news, hardware news, Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. And with me, as always, is Jacob.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the co-host of Loading Screen. Sometimes I say funny things, and today we're gonna talk about Resident Evil Village
Which was a
because
funny Let's Play.
we had some pretty funny moments from it.
We had a
I'd
good
say
time.
it was a fun game, and the impressions that I had from it, I think overall, first need to dictate back because this was a sequel, right, Alex? This is a continuation from Seven.
Yes, correct. Yeah, Resident Evil Village itself was or is a survival horror game developed and published by Capcom. And I think Capcom did an amazing job on this.
Oh
Absolutely
yeah,
stunning job.
oh
They
yeah.
did a really good job on Resident Evil 7, which is the prequel to Resident Evil Village.
Mhm.
Resident Evil 7, which I played. Jacob, I don't think you played. Did you play that?
No, I just watched some playthroughs of it, but I didn't play it myself. Actually,
Okay.
kind of same thing this time around because I was your pilot. I
You
was just your
were.
co-pilot for
You were
this. I
my
just watched you
co-pilot. Best
play.
co-pilot ever.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, guys, so we finished Resident Evil Village about 2 days ago, I believe. It was Wednesday, right? We
Yep.
finished it on Wednesday. It is now Friday. We compiled a bunch of our thoughts, a bunch of our impressions, and this is something that we want to incorporate into all of our Let's Plays. The Let's Play, Loading Screen Let's Play, it's a new segment that we're doing on Loading Screen to kind of give you guys more, gaming entertainment and obviously entertain ourselves in the process too. So, but
Of
we did play
course.
Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village is the sequel to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And in Resident Evil Village, you play as the character Ethan Winters, who is searching for his kidnapped daughter, Rose. After what did we name her, Jacob? What was her name?
We named her like Scarlet, something weird. I can't remember. We abandoned that joke so
Yeah,
fast.
we did. It was just like too much at
Jeez.
that point.
Dude, I
But
will say, the beginning of the game, the red herrings really got me. Like,
yeah,
we're walking up the steps very slowly with Rose. We put her in the bed, there's a baby monitor. We walk down the steps, and the first thing we see is the baby monitor. So we're like, "Oh, great. Oh,
yeah, we're
great.
like, great. This is
The
gonna
baby's
this
gonna get abducted
But
or
but
something."
then it didn't like I'm telling you guys, this game, and we will definitely get into it. It does a fantastic job of leading you on.
Mhm.
Basically, the story continues by after a fateful encounter with Chris Redfield, Ethan finds himself in a village, a massive village, by the way, with mutant creatures.
Way
And I
bigger than the
and
trailers made it look like.
just speaking from Resident Evil 7 Biohazard to Resident Evil 8 Village, having played them both, I think they made the improvements in all the right places. And you might see reviews that say otherwise, but me personally, I really enjoyed Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Um, and I enjoyed Resident Evil 8 Village even more. Playtime, Jacob, for us was about 8.5 hours. It didn't feel like that because it took us 9 parts, which
I
I'm not too
know.
proud of, but
We got stuck at some silly parts,
we did.
but
So let's get into it, though. Jacob. Starting the game off, what were your impressions at first?
I think the biggest impression I had was starting the game off from the trailers. I thought we were just going to stay in the manor. And then we found out very, very early on that the game is a lot bigger than just the mansion. The
Yeah,
mansion was huge. And then we see Ethan, right? And he's a badass, but at the same time, he interrupts everyone when they're trying to give him help
he's
or to
so,
tell him lore.
dude.
Like,
He's a
geez,
cocky some.
as he's looking for Rose, people are like, "Well, maybe you could shut up. I don't care."
Yeah. It's like, dude, like allow yourself to be helped. I mean, the one thing
Mhm.
that I think, so my initial impressions, and right here in the gameplay, you can see the beauty of the characters, the lighting, the environments. This part specifically was when we were in the village aspect of the game in the very
Yeah.
beginning. And my first impression was just how beautiful the game looked. I mean, you could easily tell that they used face capture for a lot of the character models, just right off the bat
Yeah,
with
the
like
cutscenes were
the intro cutscene
gorgeous.
and all that stuff. And the environment was incredibly done. I mean, dude, look at the lighting, the snow, the reflection. It looks like it's a similar engine to what Resident Evil 7 was, but
Mhm.
obviously enhanced. And it did truly. I was worried that it would look dated, but it did look like a next gen title. It did look,
Oh,
you know, how
totally.
it how I thought it should look.
Mhm.
You know, it really did feel like a new iteration from the previous Resident Evil 7. And you know, when I play games like this, I like being scared. And this goes in line with my my initial impressions is I like being scared with games like this.
Yeah, me too.
And more so, I like jump scares more than I do running from something. And Resident Evil 7 had you running from things a lot,
Mhm.
at least from what I can remember. But there were also a good amount of jump scares. So I always considered these Resident Evil iterations, this genre, because like obviously the style of Resident Evil has changed over the years, and this one
Sure.
specifically, uh, you know, I found myself running, but I also found a good balance of running from people and jump scares. I love jump scares, I really do. And if you guys watch
I
our
do love
playthroughs,
Yep. They were
yeah, I
pretty
mean,
great.
yeah, I mean, dude, there were a bunch. Did you get jump scared? Because you weren't playing in this. I was playing. You were
I
kind of
got jump
spectating.
scared a pretty decent amount. I
You
don't wanna
did.
say a lot
Hmm.
because I never get scared.
Right.
I'm all acting. I'm playing it up for you guys, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. But,
So,
there definitely were a couple that they got me even though I wasn't playing the game, that I was just sitting there with you.
yeah,
And I think overall it balanced pretty well of, keeping the game as a thriller,
yeah.
keeping you, like, going. There's this adrenaline rush that you feel, especially in some of the boss fights where the boss fight lasted the entire level, like, the entire area.
Oh
Um
man, I know. And there were a lot of bosses in this. And I mean,
Mhm.
so Jacob, real quick, you know, short summary. What were your initial impressions diving into this game for the first time?
I guess diving into it really quick, Lady Dimitrescu, I hope I said her name right. I don't think I pronounced it right
A
once
single
in the
time.
whole playthrough. Yeah. She held a lot of weight and it made a lot of sense. She was the prominent figure in the trailers and she's talked about throughout the whole story. She's kind of a
Hmm.
key figure and it's cool because no matter what happens, you're kind of trickling back and looking at all these little documents that you find, you can piece everything together, which is really cool. I love when lore does that and I love that the daughters that you fight, like some of the mini bosses early on, they're just insane and laughy. It's very, very much like Hocus Pocus. If you ever saw that movie, Alex,
Yeah.
like
Oh my
that's
God.
what
Of
I kept
course.
thinking of.
You know, it's funny you say that. I mean, and I'll get to it later, but I think one thing this Capcom did really well was when you can fall in love with an enemy
Mhm.
and really appreciate the enemy. I think it takes your, I don't know the right word, impression of the game to a whole new level. You know, the
Yeah,
two big things, real
it
quick. I'm
imprints.
just gonna, what's that?
It really like makes you imprint almost on the
Yeah,
game.
yeah, and you know, like I said, I don't want this video to be crazy long, but we wanted to give you a good in-depth analysis of the game, having played the entire thing from start to finish.
Mhm.
The two big things where I think they improved were one, the pacing,
Mhm.
and the enemy variety. In Resident Evil 7, I remember playing like human bosses, but also fighting the same mold enemy for
Right.
majority of the game. Like it was the same character model for majority of the game, along with, you know, other bosses throughout. But
Yeah.
I went into this game completely blind. And, you know, I found myself right off the bat, once you're in the village, just fighting a variety of enemies
Mhm.
and like enjoying the variety of enemies. Like it didn't feel boring. And I know in Resident Evil 7 I know I keep comparing it to it, but I think it's the best comparison because to show improvements and the improvements that they made, but you don't find yourself getting bored in this game. At least I didn't. And Jacob, you might have a few times just but you were also spectating. I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
will say, like, when you're fighting the small guys as it progresses, it
mhm,
they feel like just a time waster. They
yeah.
really do, because the knife is so weak.
Yeah.
Ethan, he's just wet noodling everyone the
He
whole
is.
time.
It's terrible.
It was
He
ridiculous because, like,
yeah.
as the game's very complete,
Mhm.
but there's one point where you find, without spoiling too much, there's a very valuable weapon that we don't see again. I kinda wish that would've been utilized more, but overall, like, even if the smaller enemies were a little annoying, the mini bosses and the bosses themselves were awesome. Also, the hydrogen peroxide, that we put on our hands all the
You mean
time.
the magic water?
Yeah, just
Quite
the
literally?
hydrogen peroxide just it's nuts. The Ethan gets messed up in this game. He gets
He does,
messed
the poor
up.
guy.
Like, it's ridiculous. And I don't know, like, the amount of the keys that we had to get in the manor, I'm just thinking how inconvenient that would be to live there. Could you imagine you need an iron insignia key, you need a bathroom key just to go
Yeah,
and,
go
like,
to the
just to
bathroom, you
yeah, just to
forget the
take it.
key all the way down in the basement.
Yeah, then you have to walk all the way back.
Yeah, it's terrible, and the floor might give out on you.
Yeah, on top of that too, the building's just unstable. The
Yeah,
property damage
exactly.
is immaculate.
It's and you know, in watching the video right here that's accompanied with what we're talking about, Jacob, you can see that, like, all of the bosses had their own mechanics. All not just the bosses though, the enemies had their own mechanics. Like, in the beginning in the village where you had the guys that, I don't wanna call them, I don't know what the right word. I'll call them brutes, right? I forget what their official title is, but like you have the brutes who are just ruthless. They just run up to you and
Yeah.
bite you. And then you have zombies, and then you have the mini bosses, and then there's towards the end of the game, they introduce even more enemies, like the mechanical guys. It's every what I liked, and this is also part of the variety and the pacing is I think all the enemies left a good variety throughout our gameplay and forced you to think of different mechanics to kill each of them. Like
Mhm.
these guys were slow, really easy to judge. I would use my knife. And then, on other ones like the werewolves or the brutes, you would have to use your pistol because they're so, I mean, you don't have to use your pistol, but they
You
are
kinda
quicker.
have to use
They're
your
quicker
pistol at that point.
reflexes, right?
Right, right. They're
Um
dodging, they're dipping, they're
yeah.
diving.
Yeah, and just dude, the variety of the enemies and how each location, there were several different biomes too, right? And each biome had their own enemy, and you weren't in each biome for too long. It was a very good paced game.
Yeah. The story was awesome and the characters were really, really rich. Like Heisenberg, for example, you meet him
Yeah.
very early on.
Yep.
He, uh he's one of the most charismatic villains I've seen in a while, and we kind of his backstory is a little open-ended.
It
We don't
is.
really get everything,
I'm a little
and I'm
upset we didn't get much more.
right. I wish he was in the game a little bit earlier. Because after you see him initially, you don't see him again for a little bit.
Mhm, mhm, and even, like, what we're looking at right here is, the one clip, we were, different mechanics, freezing bosses to kill them. They even enhanced certain enemies as well as the game continued, right? Like, different
Mhm.
locations had different, like, the enhanced zombies, for instance. Um, but it was great, dude. There were a bunch of jump scares, bunch of different enemies, bunch of different things, and real quick, I want to continue in the pacing just a little bit more before we dive into kind of the story aspect of this game, Jacob.
Yeah.
Is the variety in enemies, like I said, definitely created variety in pacing, which didn't make the game feel boring or stale at all. And as you come across different enemies, you're kind of forced to treat them differently and adjust your gameplay to, to you're forced to change your gameplay style. And
Yeah.
another thing that I think the game did well, like I said, was the biomes and the landscapes. There wasn't any part throughout this game where I felt like you were in a single place for too long. Did you feel that, Jacob?
No, they it kept you moving very, very fast. I
Yeah.
mean, literally, it was perfect for us because every hour and a half, you were in a new area. Something
Yeah.
new is happening.
And in the beginning of the game, I thought, and I think you thought, we were going to be in the castle for majority of the game.
That's what the trailer looked like.
Yeah. And then we were pleasantly surprised that that was just literally the beginning. You're freaking out in the
Mhm.
camera here.
Mhm.
Yeah. You were literally just at the very beginning of the game. Um, I just I don't know, I was pleasantly surprised.
Quite literally, like, you're hooked in the beginning.
Yeah.
Quite literally, you're hooked in the beginning.
Quite a few times, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it leaves you to, like, wonder. There's a sense of wonder, like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to get to the next biome. I can't wait to get to the
Mhm.
next place because there's new enemies." So it really did help that, and there were tons of different puzzles. I know you didn't like all the puzzles all that much, Jacob. You did mention that, right? Um,
There I did like the puzzles. It was those moments where you're feeling stupid that
yeah.
I was joking about on the last episode. I was like, "No, my dumb brain wants this to be easy." I don't
Yeah.
actually mean that. I was kidding,
Yeah.
obviously. But the puzzles are there are some really great ones. There are a couple stupid ones. I
Yeah.
did think there were a couple stinky ones, but
But at
regardless,
the same time, I mean, a game that blends horror, adrenaline by, like, people chasing you, action with the
mhm,
shooting and the fighting of enemies, and then puzzles, man.
yeah.
It I think they blended everything perfectly together. It really is a good game. Was it worth $60 in my opinion? I know that we can wait till the end to get this, but I think with everything this game has to offer, I think so. Like
I think so.
you're getting an entree that is going to fill you up,
Mhm.
and it's 100% worth it.
The
Um,
story's great. It
so
was
let's
awesome.
let's talk about the story, Jacob. I know you have your own thoughts on the story. I too have my own thoughts. So we'll just go back and forth here. Talk to for anybody listening in the review. Talk to me about what you thought. Tell me how you thought about the story.
Are we heading into spoiler territory?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, what I thought about the story.
Yeah.
I thought that wow, it's difficult not spoiling a story while you talk about a story.
So I did write some thoughts, Jacob.
Here,
If you
I
want.
do have some.
Okay. All right.
So a couple things with the story that I thought was really interesting. One was that you meet the Duke very early on, and he's the merchant. He's a very, very interesting big boy. And I like that you keep meeting these characters as we're progressing
Hmm.
that have these like small impactful moments, but each character kind of carries quite a bit of weight. With that being said, as the story is progressing, you're actively learning more and more, but not enough where you can really piece anything together. There's a lot of theory crafting in this, and I love predicting things, and
Yeah.
especially if you get them right. I
Yeah.
think I only got one thing right, but it was something late game that happened that I was stoked about, but I was also devastated
Yeah.
because I said it half as a joke, and then when it happened, I just kind of started to almost cry.
Yeah, and what's really cool about it is there's like little pieces of lore littered around. And Jacob, if we didn't find that one piece of lore, you remember at towards the end we read
Hmm.
this piece of paper and we were like, "Oh
It
my god."
linked so much.
Yeah, and I almost want I thought to myself after we read that, I was like, "Thank God we didn't just, like, skip it," because we would've
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't have hit us the same way, so,
I don't
if
think
you
it would
are
have.
considering getting this game, make sure you look around and read all the stuff. It's not a lot of reading, make sure you look around, and what got me, Jacob, and I said it a million times so far, but it's because I love it so much, is that the story had me hating and loving every single character. And in
Mhm.
my opinion, if the writers of a story can make you like and hate the villains, to me, they're good at writing, right?
I
Like if you
agree.
get somebody who's supposed to naturally be bad, and then you as the player, you sympathize with them, that's good writing.
Yeah.
And so, like in the trailers, like the Demetrescu family, the way they talked, they were charismatic, they were beautiful. Like
They're
we
so
love we
beautiful.
love that family. And they were very charismatic. And then, they turned out to be formidable foes, right? I mean,
Mhm.
obviously. But another example was, like you said, Heisenberg. Like, I really like that guy.
I
And
really liked
unfortunately,
Heisenberg.
this isn't too much of a spoiler, but you really do get to deal with Heisenberg towards the end of the game. And when you do meet him, like he's charismatic. And I mean, you saw in the playthrough, if you guys watched through the playthrough, like I'm arguing with the main character Ethan. I'm like, "Ethan, listen to this guy." And he's like, "No, F
That's what I
you." I'm
mean.
like, Listen to
Ethan
this guy."
Ethan will people are about to dump so much lore on him that you as the audience, as the player, you're like, "Please tell me. I have been waiting." And Ethan will interrupt these guys. And you're like, "Okay, I get it from his perspective, but at the same time,
Ethan just
how are
verbally
you gonna
abuses
save your
them.
daughter if you
Oh,
don't figure this stuff out?" Like we are led to believe that he is this amazing father that would do anything for his wife and child. And then when he's about to get something that could help him, he just gets all ignorant and stupid and goes,
I
"Nah,
know. It was
nah, I'm good. I'm good."
yeah, yeah, like we're like, "No, Ethan, no."
We're
But
like,
then like
"Ethan,
then you find
let
yourself
him talk."
now listen to this, Jacob, like there's writing for you. You are now sympathizing with the villain and getting angry at the protagonist.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Because he's
Brilliant.
super flawed.
Brilliant. And the story was a typical Resident Evil like story of this genre. And when I say this genre, I mean like RE7, RE8, the heavy story first person horror, like this new genre that they've been implementing. Um where you're left to figure out a majority of things, and it somewhat eases you into it, like you're pretty much left hanging for majority of the game, and then bam, like it hits
Yep.
you like a truck
You
towards
get a
the end of the
lot of
game.
stuff dropped on you.
like Jedi Fallen Order. If anybody's played Jedi Fallen Order, how a lot of it in the beginning is figuring everything out, and then at the end, like the last hour and a half, 2 hours is just like a movie. That's
Mhm.
very much how this was like. And I think the last hour and a half of gameplay is really where the game
I think
not
it's where it
necessarily
shines.
started to shine, but like really like
I think
started
that's
to
when the pacing
glisten.
picks up.
Yeah.
It goes from 1 to 100.
It was like a movie, and it was
Mhm.
fantastic, bro. I mean, and then there's this one part at the end where we'll wait to talk about it at spoilers, but there's this one part that happened where it just completely changes the dynamic of the game. Completely. Like we had people coming into chat and being like, "Yo, are you playing this game? What game is this?" And we were like,
Yeah,
"No,
the
this
whole
is this
dynamic
game."
switches up.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. If you don't want spoilers, we're going to go into spoilers in a little bit. Don't worry, we will give you the official cue, but overall, no spoilers. Overall, my impression of this game was fantastic. If 10 out of 10 is like this game made it into my top 5, which is very difficult to make it into my top 5. This game's not a 10 out of 10. It did not make it in my top 5. However, this game did have me thinking about it afterwards. This game did have me wanting to play more every time I picked it up. I'd give it a 7 or I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
But that's a
Okay.
good 7 out of 10. Like, don't think that's bad. Like, I
No,
would think
I
less
can
than
agree with
5,
you.
Jacob. Less than 5 would be like, you might like it, you might not like it.
Right.
7 is, if you pick it up, you're most likely going to like it and you're going to enjoy it. What about you?
I think I'd stick with I think 7 makes a lot of sense because it's definitely not in my top 5, but the experience of let's playing this with you was a ton of fun.
Mhm.
And the story in itself, I found myself Googling just lore when I was done. I wanted to
Did
know more
you?
about the world. And I think overall, like Resident Evil, it's always had a great way of world building,
Mhm.
but it's also so amazing because they give you only enough where you have to search for it. You
Yeah.
have to actively want to learn the lore if you want to
And it
figure it
doesn't hold
out.
your hand,
It doesn't
which I
hold your
like.
hand. It respects you enough where you are thrown into this environment, figure it out. They're not going to coddle
Exactly.
you. And when they try to coddle you, the protagonist is like, "Nah, I'm good.
F you,
I
dude.
got this."
Yeah. So, would it get the Jacob stamp of approval?
It gets the Jacob stamp of approval
And what would
for
you rate
sure.
it again?
I'd rate it a 7 out of 10.
Oh,
7
7
out of
across
10.
the board. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your Resident Evil Village Let's Play. 7 out of 10 from loading screen. There you
7
go.
out of 10.
So now,
We're heading
if you're
into
still
spoiler
listening,
territory.
we're going into spoiler territory because there are a lot of spoilers that are very exciting to talk about. So if you don't care about spoilers, continue listening. If you do, pick up the game, play it yourself. Highly recommend it. And we'll see you in the next review. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching the Let's Play.
Thank you.
But let's talk about spoilers for a little bit, Jacob.
So first of all, that ending was an emotional roller coaster. That was so nuts, man. Like I'm just sitting there, I'm watching you fight our wife who was with us but wasn't with us.
Our
Again,
daughter.
we don't know everything, and then we see our daughter. We finally get Rose back. We get Rose back. Everything's good. Ethan is on his last legs, and then boom, Ethan dies.
Well, you know what freaking gets me? Real quick, what gets me, Jacob, is the entire story. We find out, or we're thinking that Mia is dead. The
We thought
entire
she was just
story. She gets
murked.
freaking lit up in
She
the
gets lit
beginning of
up
the
in the
game.
beginning.
In the beginning of the game.
The game's like, hey, you want to play a game? Boo! Strap in.
And we're
Here
like,
we
yeah.
go.
And Jake, we're like, oh, so it's this
Well,
kind
I
of game.
guess we're
But
going
like
for this
it
game.
hooks us right away, right? Because it's like, holy crap, we're going to hit you in the face with this brick, and then later on in the game, we find out, excuse me, that it's not Mia; it was Mother Miranda faking this whole time. Then you're like, then it's one of those moments where you're like, everything I know is
I know. You're looking
fake.
back at everything. She was being super weird
Nothing
in the
is
beginning.
real.
I was looking at a video recently. The
Yeah,
beginning dialogue that she says is super sketch.
yeah.
It's kind of out of character. And then there's hints too. So Ethan dies, and we're both just like, oh my god. I was kidding when I said he wanted to
The
die.
first
But
time
then
in a game where the main character
then
dies.
Chris comes out of there. Now you're playing Call of Duty and you're feeling good because you're like, oh, these
Bro,
small guys
the
deserve
Call of
this.
Duty sequence. I mean, guys, it was literally Call of Duty.
It's
They
just you playing
changed
as
they
Chris.
changed the gameplay from, and that was another pacing thing. They changed the gameplay from like slow knife stabby stab. Ethan really doesn't know how to wield a knife at all.
No, he doesn't.
Cooking dinner, I wield a knife better than Ethan
He's a
does.
wet noodle.
Yeah, literally, bro. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into this high adrenaline, high octane first person shooter, which is, oh my god.
It's so satisfying. And then Ethan's alive. He's got to finish the job. And then we find out this whole time.
Part of me.
We find Mia. We find her. And I'm sitting there like, that's not Mia. That's Miranda.
Yeah, you're
There's
led to
something
believe
crazy
it's
there.
like psychological warfare,
And
bro.
then it gets weirder because she's like, you told me if we moved, we'd be safe. So she wasn't. When he rescued her in the 7th game, they were together for a period. I don't know when Miranda got there, but at some point it happened. And then we find out that Ethan's a mold man. And the only clue we had throughout the game was the magic hydrogen peroxide. Do you remember the scene when he puts his whole fucking hand back on
Yeah.
and says nothing about it? Nothing.
And we were very confused about it too. We thought it was lazy writing.
Alex, he literally, I don't think he even blinked at it.
No, he didn't. He didn't even be like, "What? How did that happen?" He just did it.
So then we get the final boss fight, and it's finally done. It looks like we're finally at a point where Ethan's going to have a happy ending, and they're walking away, and Ethan's body is just crumbling. It is doing the same thing that every enemy that we killed thus far
Yep.
has happened. He's just crumbling, and Chris is walking with him with Rose. He gives Rose to him and just says, I'm gonna finish this. And it completes a story arc, which was super satisfying. He saved Rose. His wife was alive, which was just a plus. And now he can finally die happy knowing that he fulfilled his duty, not just as a father, but he took down this huge threat. This threat to not just his family, but to so many others, to everyone in this village. There was a whole village beforehand. There were so many characters we met early on that they were all good. And then we see this daughter and this father have this heartbreaking experience, and that could have been us and Rose, but we made sure that didn't happen.
Bro, they have you hating and loving so many different characters. It was literally an emotional roller coaster.
It was.
And I had this brain blast yesterday, Jacob, so I'm going to go on a bit of a rant real quick before we finish up here. But what I thought was really cool was like the bit of the little bit of info that we got on that piece of paper that I said was like, and me personally, this is probably my mistake for not really knowing all that much of the lore behind Resident Evil. But again, there were some people in the chat who have been Resident Evil fans and were surprised by this. But we didn't know up until this point that this is essentially the beginning of Umbrella Corp. Right? Yep. And so and on top of that, the story arc for Ethan showed how, and this is talking from Resident Evil 7 to Resident Evil Village. The story arc showed how determined Ethan was. And I think you have to be good at empathy. Like you have to have empathy and be good at it and putting yourself in people's shoes to really sympathize with Ethan on this one and really enjoy the end of the game, which I think, you were torn up at the end of this game. And I think that's because, like, being in film, you tend to, I do the exact same thing where you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of the character, right? So, but literally everything he's willing to go through to end the miserable life that the mold had caused in his and his family's life, right? And he tried so freaking hard. Like there was nothing. Like this is like perfect husband. There was nothing he wasn't willing to do to save his wife and his daughter. Nothing at all. Literally nothing. And it literally he literally went through hell so that he can help them and give them a better life, and literally ended his life in the most poetic, beautiful, sacrificial ending.
He went out with a bang.
He went out quite literally.
Quite literally and figuratively.
To like exchange the happiness and for the future of his family for the exchange of his life, putting his wife and daughter first above himself, above everything. And dude, that is like, if you think about that, that's hard to do. Like
Yeah.
that takes I mean, it's easier said than done, but like that takes the mental capacity of like an incredible mental capacity. And the
Mhm.
end was very, and so, okay, so, we have Ethan. Ethan actually does die. The main character dies. The one
Yep.
character that we basically built a relationship with, um, dies, but he saves his daughter,
And
and then he
he
saves his wife, and in a miraculous explosion. And then at the end, when she's in the plane, and she's like, "Where's Ethan?" Like you see how much she cares about him, right?
she's just distraught, and Chris said
Yes.
there's not much he can
Even Chris
say,
is distraught.
and they linger on it because Chris, the whole reason that this happened was he didn't wanna get Ethan involved, but he should have known from the beginning. Ethan was the type that was going to, and he says it, and then he helps you against the Heisenberg fight, and then things are finally going together, and
Well,
then
what's also crazy
what?
is Ethan. I mean, not Ethan. Chris. He comes across as this like asshole, military dude.
Yeah, like a hard ass.
But at the end, in his engagement with Rose and Ethan, he's really torn up about it. Like
Dude,
really
even
torn up about
beforehand,
losing Ethan. He is torn up.
when you're playing as him, his, comrades are talking to him and kind of saying, like, "You should have told him." Almost like giving him, like, a pep talk and stuff because he feels like shit.
Yeah,
He 100% felt terrible.
dude, insane.
It was great, and then we get to the very end. We get to the very end, we
So
do a
after,
time
are we talking
skip.
about after credits right now?
Yep, I'm talking about
Okay.
the after credits.
So
We get to the time skip.
after credits. Oh, hold on, real quick before we get into that, and one line here because I don't want to. This video is already going on a little too long. Um, you're left with a little teaser. You're left with a little teaser of EU sending a zombie trooper.
Yeah.
So like there's some unknowns there. But anyway, okay. So post credit sequence, Jacob. This hit you like a train. And I want to give you my thoughts after you give me yours.
You laughed at me for this because we're going up there. I'm like all crying. I'm weeping. I'm
Guys,
like,
Jacob is weeping on camera.
is she going to his grave? And you're like, no, she's going to someone else's grave. I was like,
Like,
fuck you, dude.
yeah.
Fuck off. So Rose walks up. I believe on the tombstone it said like something along the lines of like being an amazing father, which was really sweet. And then this like agent calls her over and he says something along the lines of like you're just like Ethan, and then he pisses her off saying like he was a bad guy or something.
Yeah.
And Rose says like don't piss me off, like not even
So
Chris knows what I can do, what I'm
so
capable of.
when I said this, the end of this was like a movie. The ending credit sequence was the most emotional. It was the best emotional because you got closure for the most part, but it was also very emotional with like, how I mean like a legitimate movie. Like
Yeah.
she's going up to her father's tombstone. They note that she goes every day, but she's being monitored, Jacob. And this is where I had this brain blaze yesterday. Was the end is very much like a movie, and it felt like the perfect end to Ethan's shitty few years, like when he ended up passing and he had to just push through all this.
Yeah.
But I find it cool that the main character did in fact end up dying because that isn't something that happens very often, and the writers did a very good job of passing the emotion from the main character
God,
back to Mia and Rose,
they
right?
passed the torch on, especially when it says the father's story has ended.
Yeah. And I need to find my notes here because I thought I had written them down here, but I didn't.
That's okay.
The
But it's implying that the continuation, most likely the next Resident Evil, Rose will be the main character.
Yeah, and you know what really gets me is that at the end of this, the one guy's being a smartass to her. She's grown up now, which is it's kind of emotional in and of itself. Like she's grown up now, because she's been a baby this whole time, and the guy pisses her off, and she goes, "You have no idea what I can do." And right then, it's like spurs the idea. It's like, oh shit. So like there's a teaser that says Rose knows what kind of power she has. You're told throughout the
Yeah.
entire story that she's got insane power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, yeah, you never see it. And then at the end, she's like, "You don't know what I can do," which means at some point she must have figured out what she can actually do.
And the whole time, Heisenberg was telling us that Rose was a monster, that she could take on Mother Miranda. And it took us. Mother Miranda has a lot of health. So for Rose as a baby to be able to take her on, I think it sets up the story really well for the next game. And
Yep.
overall, I'm hooked. Like when the next one comes out, I will be playing it.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
Resident Evil Village did an incredible job.
Yeah. Claps all around from
Yeah.
the team. Claps all around from the team. Well done, Capcom. And like I said, we're left with either playing as Mia, or we're left as playing as Rose, maybe, or even Chris in the
Grandma
next
Mia.
one. Yeah, right. It's just, I'm just so excited, man. They left with a cliffhanger of how powerful Rose is. Like, okay, well, where's that story? They even called her Evelyn at one point.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jacob, do you have any like final thoughts that you want to say?
Nope. I think I've said them all.
Cool.
Thank you
Awesome.
guys so much
Yeah,
for
everybody,
watching.
thank you for listening to our very first review. This is something that we want to continue doing throughout the course of Loading Screen, where we will play a game on stream. We'll do some walkthroughs, playthroughs. It took us 9 parts to do this, 8.5 hours. But overall, Jacob and I, you guys heard it here, 7 out of 10. We were both very, very, very pleased with it. I think the writers of Capcom did a fantastic job with this game, and they have us both wanting to play more. And
Mhm.
it was like a movie. And if you can, in my opinion, if the story can make me feel something, good job.
Good
Good
job.
job.
Great job.
So there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to Loading Screen Let's Play Resident Evil Village uh, impressions video. And we're going to be doing much more. Tune into our show every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. on twitch.tv and YouTube. And yeah, that's it for this. Tune
Thank
into the
you
next
guys so
one.
much for watching.
Subscribe to YouTube and follow on Twitch. Don't forget to do that. See you guys next time.
See ya.
Peace.